Welcome everyone to my Navia Guide. In this guide, I will go over her kit, playstyle, best artifact options, stats you should be looking for, the different weapons you can use, possible teams you can run, and lastly, Constellations. Keep in mind that Navia is not out yet, and things may change a bit after release. Without further ado, let's get right into her kit. Navia is a 5-star attack scaling geo damage dealer. She uses a claymore and has a crit damage ascension bonus. Most of her damage comes from her elemental skill, which fires off a cannon. When any of your party members collect a Crystallize, Shard Navia gains a crystal shrapnel charge, and her elemental skill damage will increase. The maximum number of crystal shrapnel charges you can gain from crystallized shards is 6. The first 3 shards will increase the number of hits fired off from Navia's elemental skill, and if 3 shards are collected, the damage will be increased by 200%. Shards gained above 3 will increase damage by 15%, up to 6 charges. The skill has 2 casts, each with a 9-second cooldown. These crystallized shards can be picked up by anyone in your party, it doesn't have to be Navia. And you can track the number of shards through these bullets that appear on the left side. The first 3 will be counted separately, and charges above 3 will make a bullet appear bigger and brighter. The skill can also be held, allowing you to aim. Navia's first ascension, passive grants Geo Infusion to her normal, charged, and plunging attacks after you use your elemental skill, and increases the damage by 40%. And the infusion lasts for 4 seconds. Due to this passive, you don't want to cast your second elemental skill right after the first. You should instead normal attack until the duration runs out and then cast your second skill and repeat. Although I did not test this myself, the actual duration for the Geo Infusion is likely not 4 seconds, but a bit longer due to the in-game mechanism of hit lag. What you need to know is that in most scenarios, you will have a bit more than 4 seconds to use your normal attacks. Navia's Elemental Burst deals AoE Geo damage to opponents and fires a support cannon that deals Geo damage for 16 hits. Every 2.4 seconds, a hit from the cannon will grant you a crystal shrapnel charge. From her burst alone, Navia can gain 5 crystal shrapnel charges, and her burst applies Geo. So with another element, you can gain crystallized shards to reach the maximum number of 6. Navia's burst has an energy cost of 60 and a cooldown of 15 seconds. So, to gain crystallized shards, you will need teammates of elements that interact with Geo, by applying their respective elements and preferably from off-field. Which leads to Navia's second ascension passive, which increases attack by 20% for each Pyro, Electro, Cryo, or Hydro teammate. The attack bonus can stack up to 2. And if you're wondering, she has an Expedition passive. Now that we know what her kit looks like, teams centered around Navia's damage will need 2 other elements that can generate crystallized shields and another Geo character to help generate extra crystallized shards whenever you don't have Navia's burst and provides the Geo resonance, which increases your damage dealt by 15% and decreases Geo resistance by 20% if protected by a shield. And in a theoretical rotation, you would first use your burst to gain crystal shrapnel charges, use your supports, and then switch to Navia and use your elemental skill and normal attacks. Navia can be played in multiple ways. You can run her as a main DPS and build a team revolving around her, such as the team of 2 elements that react with Geo and a Geo support. For Navia's own damage, these teams will be the best for her, but being a Geo character, such teams that rely on Geo damage may not be the best for specific content like the Abyss. Because Geo does not have a strong reaction that deals damage, and Geo characters tend to have stronger numbers and multipliers to make up for this lack of reaction damage. The other options you would have would be to run her as a sub-DPS or use her in a reaction-based team where she does not interfere with the reaction. As a sub-DPS, you could use her in teams that do not require a specific 4th slot and with other main DPS characters that do not take up all the field time. The same goes for reaction-based teams such as Vaporize and Hyperbloom, where you can use Navia to provide her own damage from her skill. Going for a playstyle like this allows you to clear content that a main DPS team would struggle with, and in a lot of cases, you may find such teams more appealing, as reaction-based teams may yield higher overall team damage. For your talent priority, first and foremost, you will always want to level up her skill first. If you're playing Navia as a main DPS, it would be better to level her normal attacks first, then her burst. If you're playing Navia as a sub-DPS and not always normal attacking, you should level her burst, then normal attacks. Overall, All of her talents contribute to damage, and my recommendation would be to level them all. Moving on to artifacts, Nighttime Whispers in the Echoing Woods, a new set coming out with Navia, is going to be her best in slot in teams without Furina. This set increases attack and geo damage. When you gain a crystallized shield, the geo damage will be increased to 50%. If you lose the shield, the damage bonus will disappear after 1 second. While this set is good on Navia, it is not always consistent as it requires a crystallized shield. While that is not hard to get in a geo team, you may not always get the bonus if you, for example, start your rotation by using your burst, and you may lose shields in between your elemental skill casts. Little inconsistencies result in this set being slightly behind Marechaussee Hunter. If you were to have 100% uptime on your crystallized shields, this set would be better than Marechaussee Hunter. Marechaussee Hunter is a universally strong set as it increases crit rate whenever your HP changes. This set is only viable in teams with Furina, as she drains your HP, and it would not work without field time to trigger the crit rate bonus. So, if you're using Navia as a sub DPS and quickly swap in between characters, you may not always trigger the crit rate bonus and lose out on damage for your elemental skill. Marechaussee Hunter works best in teams with Furina, and where you're using Navia on field to trigger the crit rate bonus. Overall, the damage difference between the two sets is negligible and can be made up by better substats. Vermilion Hereafter is similar to Marechaussee Hunter, but it requires using your burst to gain the attack bonus and a bit more on field time. Golden Troop is a set that increases your elemental skill damage, and it can be used on Navia. It grants you 20% skill damage from the 2-piece bonus and 25% from the 4-piece bonus, and an additional 25% if you're off-field. The off-field bonus goes away after 2 seconds of switching into your character. The skill damage bonus is useful on Navia, but if you're using Navia as a main DPS, you will likely only make use of the whole bonus to only one of your elemental skill casts. This set becomes more viable as a sub-DPS, where you would have her off-field more often, and as a sub-DPS this set becomes more viable and only marginally behind Nighttime Whispers. Other than those sets, you can use a 2-piece mix of attack and geo damage or even Golden Troop. Other sets like Husk of Opulent Dreams don't work on Navia, as she scales on attack and Husk increases defense. Moving on to stats, firstly I want to talk about energy recharge. With Navia's 60 burst cost and 2 skill casts, you don't need a lot of energy recharge. With another Geo unit, around 130% energy recharge should be a comfortable target. The energy recharge requirement would of course decrease if you're using Favonius in your party. As a sub-DPS, without another Geo unit and less on field time, you may be looking at a higher energy recharge target, around 150%. This of course depends on your team and will change from team to team. For your Sans, attack percent is the best since she scales on attack. For your Goblet, Geo damage bonus is the best. If you're using someone like Furina in your team, an attack Goblet becomes more viable. But generally the difference is around 5%, and you should choose based on substats. As for your Circlet, go for either crit rate or damage, whichever you need more off. For your substats, you would want energy recharge until your target is met, crit damage and crit rate, and attack. Before I go over weapons, your own weapons ranking will depend on your specific build. Damage numbers you see here should not be taken at face value. Weapons may change depending on energy recharge requirements and build. For this ranking, I assumed 130% energy recharge requirement, level 9 talents, and level 90 weapons and characters. All weapons are at refinement rank 1, unless specifically mentioned next to the weapon. I will provide 2 sheets, the first being a general ranking and the second with a main DPS team. Navia's best in slot is her signature weapon, Verdict. Verdict increases crit rate and attack, and whenever you gain a crystallized shard, your elemental skill damage would also increase. Gaining crystallized shards should not be difficult with Navia, and this weapon is her overall best in slot. Beacon of the Reed Sea is a strong weapon, increases crit and attack, and further increases attack if your character takes damage. You may not always take damage if you're protected by crystallized shards, but even so, it is still a strong weapon, and her second best most of the time. Redhorn Stone Thresher, although increases defense, is another strong weapon, and it becomes better if you're using an attack buffing unit such as Bennett. Your best 4-star option would be Serpent Spine, but it is a paid Battle Pass weapon. Serpent Spine gives you a damage bonus the longer you are on field, and at max stacks, it is better than a lot of other 5-star weapons. Your best free-to-play option would be the upcoming 4.3 event weapon, Ultimate Overlord's Mega Magic Sword. This weapon gives you energy recharge and increases attack. It also has an interesting passive, where it increases your attack even further based on how many Melusines you have helped. It is not quite clear which Melusines this is referring to. But assuming 2 Melusines helped, this weapon is a strong pick, and at Refinement Rank 5, it is stronger than a lot of other 5-star weapons. Sacrificial Greatsword is an interesting pick, and especially at high refinements, it works well on Navia. Although it has a lower base attack and an energy recharge substat, it resets your elemental skill cooldown once every 30 seconds. The extra skill hit makes this weapon strong and viable, even more so if you're playing Navia as a sub-DPS to use her skill. With an attack buffing unit such as Bennett, this weapon becomes better and is up there with other 5-star weapons, with a full team of Bennett, Furina, and a second Geo. There is a bit of changes, mostly being weapons with lower base attack becoming better since you gain a lot of attack buffs from Navia's passive and other party members. Feel free to pause and compare. Moving on to teams, and starting with a main DPS team. Your team would include 2 units of either Pyro, Electro, Cryo, or Hydro characters to trigger Crystallize and Navia's passive, and a second Geo character to activate the Geo Resonance and gain more crystallized shards. For your second Geo character, you can either go for a support character, such as Albedo, Zhongli, Yunjin, or Geo Traveler, or go for a sub-DPS character such as Noelle or Ningguang. Other Geo characters like Goru or Ido are not really recommended. Goru provides a defense buff, which is not useful for Navia, and Ido, while he can be used as a sub-DPS, he's not that great for this slot as he scales differently from Navia and requires different teams. For your support Geo characters, Yunjin, although she buffs normal attacks, her overall contribution to damage is not as great as the other supports. Geo Traveler provides off-field Geo damage and can use an attack buffing set. Zhongli is a great pick for this role, as he provides resistance reduction and a bit of off-field Geo damage, and he can use an attack buffing set such as Tenacity. Albedo is probably going to be the best option for this slot. Albedo provides decent damage from his skill, and although he does not buff Navia, his personal damage contribution is probably going to be better than Zhongli. As for sub-DPS options, Noelle can help you heal and shield while providing decent personal damage. Noelle's healing can help you a lot if you're using Furina in your team. Ningguang provides Geo damage bonus through her passive and deals a decent amount of damage. Between these two, I would prefer Ningguang as she is able to directly buff Navia. So, who should you use for your second Geo slot? In most cases, I would recommend using a support such as Zhongli or Albedo, as your rotations would be easier to manage. And having off-field Geo will be much more comfortable than having to switch to another character and start attacking. If you do not have either, Ningguang is going to be decent, as she provides Geo damage bonus and decent personal damage. Moving on to the remaining 2 slots, you would want any 2 Pyro, Electro, Cryo, or Hydro characters. For a Navia-focused team, Dendro is not recommended as it does not generate crystallized shards and does not react with Geo. The same goes for Anemo, as it does not interact with Geo, and resistance reduction from Viridescent Venerer will not work. So, you need a character that activates the passive and applies their element from off-field to generate crystallized shards. The best character for this Navia main DPS team is going to be Furina. Furina can consistently apply Hydro, and does not need to recast her skill, and her Hydro summons can move around. On top of that, Furina provides a huge damage buff, which is very useful for Navia. Other than Furina, many other characters can work in this slot, just to name a few: Fischl, Raiden, Yae Miko, Kokomi, Yellen, Xingqiu, Charlotte, Layla, Toma, and Zhangling. Each character comes with their own benefits. Catalyst users like Kokomi and Charlotte can use Thrilling Tales of Dragon Slayer, which increases attack for your next party member. Layla can apply Cryo from off-field and shields. Fischl and Yae Miko provide good off-field damage. I would prefer using a character like Furina over Yellen or Xingqiu, just because you can apply Hydro without normal attacking, and that would be great for Navia, as you can generate crystallized shards passively without having to normal attack between characters. And the final slot in this team would have to go to Bennett. Bennett is both a healer and one of the best buffers in this game, as his burst provides an attack buff, and he can use Noblesse Oblige. But with this team comp there is a problem, being that Bennett may not always keep up with Furina's HP drain. Bennett's burst, which is the source of his healing, has a healing limit and does not heal the entire party, which will make Furina's damage buff a bit lower, and you will have to switch between characters to heal. But that should be manageable if you switch between characters before Navia's on field time, and the trade-off is not bad, as Bennett provides a huge buff. Instead of Bennett, you can run double Hydro with Furina and Yellen, or you can use Xiangling instead of Furina, activating the Pyro Resonance, which increases attack, and Xiangling's own personal damage is decent. For sub-DPS teams, you can use Navia as an elemental skill damage dealer in teams that don't require a specific 4th slot. There are many teams that fit this description, but for such teams, you may want to review your options, as there may be a better character out there that can contribute more to the team. While on the sub-DPS category, you can run Navia in reaction-based teams such as Vaporize and Hyperbloom or Burgeon. These teams work because Geo does not directly interrupt these reactions. For a Vaporize team, you would use Bennett and Xiangling, and a Hydro support. Furina is a great Hydro support for this team, but her Hydro application does not keep up, so you can use other units such as Yellen and Xingqiu and drive the team using Navia's elemental skill and Geo Infusion. And the same goes for a Hyperbloom team, where you would build a regular Hyperbloom team with a Dendro character, Hydro and Electro, and use Navia as a sort of driver using her skill and Geo Infusion. The same also applies for Burgeon. And lastly, Constellations. Navia's C1 restores 3 energy for each crystal shrapnel charge used by her skill, and decreases the cooldown of her burst. The maximum energy restored this way is 9, and a 3-second cooldown reduction for her burst. This constellation is not really that strong. It reduces your energy recharge requirements by a bit and reduces your burst cooldown. Her C2 is one of her strongest constellations and a good stopping point if you plan on pulling for her constellations. For each crystal shrapnel charge consumed, Navia's elemental skill crit rate will be increased by 12%, up to a maximum of 36%. And when you use her skill, one support cannon fire from her elemental burst will hit an opponent, giving you additional damage. Navia's C2 is a really strong constellation and the strongest single constellation upgrade aside from C6. Navia's C3 increases her elemental skill level by 3, which brings a good upgrade. Her C4 decreases geo resistance of enemies hit by Navia's elemental burst by 20% for 8 seconds. This is another strong constellation, but you have to time her burst properly to make use of the geo resistance reduction. And your second elemental skill cast may not make use of the resistance reduction. Her C5 increases her elemental burst level by 3. Navia's C6 is her strongest constellation. If more than 3 crystal shrapnel charges are collected, each charge above 3 will increase crit damage by 45% for Navia's elemental skill. Additionally, charges above 3 will be refunded to Navia. The crit damage increase can total up to 135%, and that is a huge damage increase. And the crystal shrapnel refund makes stacking the charges again easier. Her C6 is a really big upgrade to her damage, but it is not a necessary constellation, and you don't have to feel forced to pull for it. Navia is perfectly playable at C0. And that is all from this guide. I hope you found this guide helpful. Thank you for making it till the end, and thank you for watching.